Hello. So, good morning, everyone. So, it's my great honor to announce that our guest lecturer is here, and her name is Dr. Ruchika Gupta, ma'am. Currently, she is doing her masters in neurological and psychosomatic disorders, and also she is working as a diabetic fitness instructor, diet and nutritional instructor, and psychological counselor at her own physiotherapy and diabetic clinic, that is Divine Physiotherapy and Diabetic Clinic in Jaipur. And this is the second webinar by her for NCP. So, ma'am, now you can start your lecture and share your knowledge with all of us. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shivani ma'am, for such a good introduction. Thank you for inviting me again for this webinar. I'm really glad that you people like my webinars, and I want to deliver more to the society and do
Yes,
physiotherapy fraternity. Thank you.
yes,
Shall I start?
yes, ma'am. You can start now.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Uh, I'm here to share some knowledge about replacing diabetes with exercises. Today we are going to talk totally about exercises, not about electrotherapy, not about any other kind of therapy, but exercises, which are basic things, which are the key points in our uh, physiotherapy stream. Okay. So this presentation is brought to you by Sankarshan Patel University, and I thank Newton College of Physiotherapy, Dr. Subhash Khatri sir, to invite me for doing this webinar. These are my contact details in case you people want to message me or ask me about anything related to this webinar. You can take a screenshot and contact me later. So basically objective for this webinar is what are exercises, what are the effects of various exercises in diabetes, prerequisites of prescribing exercises, FITTs and progression of various exercises, do's and don'ts, and other maneuvers you can prescribe to diabetics. Okay, so these all are things that you need to do with a patient with diabetics, and after this webinar you must be able to answer all these questions. So first of all, when we start a fight against anyone, we need to know who our enemy is. So basically, we will know about diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic metabolic disease characterized by elevated levels of blood glucose or blood sugar, which leads over time to serious damage to heart, blood vessels, eyes, kidneys, and nerves. Basically, it can also cause multi-organ failure, and prevalence of diabetes is way too high, 422 million people worldwide, in which 1.6 million deaths just occurs because of diabetes, not other factors are included, just because of diabetes. Approximately 463 million adults right now are suffering from diabetes, which are in between the age of 20 to 79 years. And it is estimated by International Diabetic Federation that by year 2045 there will be 700 million people. So you can know that what is the seriousness of this disease. And in India, it is 8.9% prevalence rate of diabetes, and right now these many people are suffering. So we need to do something about this disease, and we need to be serious. Okay. Now we will see what are the type of diabetes. So basically, diabetes is classified on the basis of pathogenesis. So type 1 diabetes, which is also known as diabetes mellitus or juvenile diabetes. What happens in this? There are islets of Langerhans cells in pancreas. So these cells get disrupted, and there is absolute insulin deficiency. Okay, and what happens? What is the role of insulin? Insulin helps our cells to take up blood glucose and convert it into energy. So when there is no insulin, there is no blood glucose take up, and there is no conversion to energy. So basically, there will be generalized weakness and all the related factors. Then we come to type 2 diabetes. Am I audible to all?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. Then we come to type 2 diabetes. It is also known as diabetes insipidus. What happens in this? There is insulin, but the cells which are there to receive insulin are highly resistant, or their threshold level increases. So basically, there is relative deficiency of insulin in the blood, and there is higher amounts of free glucose traveling around the blood. So glucose levels are increases. Insulin is present, but threshold is increases. That's why there is relative deficiency. Then the other pathogenesis is when there is a pancreatic disease or endocrine disease, or there is drug abuse or any chemical abuse which causes diabetes in later stages. Okay, it might be any hepatic disorder, it might be cirrhosis, it might be jaundice. So these causes eventually lead to diabetes. Okay, then the last kind of diabetes is gestational diabetes. What happens when a woman is pregnant and she's in her 23rd week or above? What happens? Blood glucose level tend to rise, and doctors name it as gestational diabetes. It is not a true diabetes, but it can convert into type 1 or type 2 diabetes on later stages if it is not managed properly. So, what are exercises? We know what are physical activities and we know what are exercises. There is a lot of difference between physical activities and exercise. Physical activities is what I do in daily routine. If I talk to someone on call and I just roam around, that is my physical activity. If I go to gym, I practice, I do sets of exercises with 25 kgs of weight. So this is exercise. It is planned, it is structured, repetitive, and it is aimed to improve my physical well-being. So these are the difference between exercises and my physical activity. Then exercises versus diabetes. Now, what is the role of exercises in diabetes, and what kind of, am I not audible?
No, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. Exercises versus diabetes. So basically, exercises are structured in that way which solves the problems related to diabetes. First of all, we need to prevent the prevalence of diabetes. Those people who are obese, who are highly susceptible to diabetes, or who can develop diabetes due to genetic factors also, we need to prevent them to convert their condition right now into diabetes. So basically, exercises prevent diabetes to happen. Second, blood glucose level. So we know that 95, the number 95 is a normal blood glucose level that we take into account. 95 to 115 is moderate, and above that is high blood glucose level. So basically, blood glucose levels are decreased when we do exercises. So if a person is hyperglycemic, you will tend to see that blood glucose levels are eventually decreasing with the progression of exercises. Then cardiovascular risk. If there is any risk of cardiovascular diseases like atherosclerosis, okay, or any kind of respiratory distress, or the person's endurance is low and he can develop cardiorespiratory diseases later on, or cardiovascular diseases, peripheral vascular diseases. So we can prevent all those risks through exercises. Then weight. When you come across a diabetic patient, you basically see a pear-shaped body and thin legs. Okay, these are also known as chicken legs. So basically, this kind of body structure is related to diabetes. But I want to state that diabetes is not related to weight. Why? Because the person, if he is also suffering from hypothyroidism or any other disease which is causing relative weight loss, then weight will be less and the person will also be suffering from diabetes. So you need to check for those factors also. Okay, so basically weight is the primary target when you treat a patient of diabetes. Then insulin sensitivity. Exercises are reported to be decreasing the threshold value of insulin receptors. So basically increase in insulin sensitivity is developed, and with time there is effective tapering of insulin doses. Then muscle strength. Okay, when a person is suffering with diabetes, there is relative decrease in muscle strength, and there is reported weakness, generalized weakness of body. So basically, we target to strengthen large muscle groups through exercises. Okay, and this also leads to various physiological changes. So why I am telling you all these things? You know all these things because you have came across this in your BPT or MPT, whatever you have done. So. But these things are stated here to give a review that how you can relate exercise with diabetes and what kind of role it plays in it. Okay, then what do you need to know before prescribing exercises? First of all, when a person comes to you that I am a diabetic person, my weight is not decreasing, I am trying my best, but I cannot help it, and day by day my condition is getting worse. What you will do, you will first assess him. Your assessment will start the point he will enter your clinic. So first of all, you will see his gait and everything. We have discussed this in our previous webinar in assessment part. So basically you have to take care if he has a cardiovascular disease or not. How will you discuss this? By taking history, his medical and his surgical histories. Okay, then the next thing is diabetic foot and deformities. The person will with diabetes having diabetic foot or any peripheral vascular disorders or some deformities is not recommended to go under weight training, or he is not recommended to bear weight on the affected side. So we have to assess this first. Then pre-exercise vitals, which constitute of BP, heart rate, pulse. Okay, ABI is ankle brachial index. We have discussed this also. Ankle brachial index shows you that there is no peripheral vascular disease, or there is basically good supply of oxygen and nutrients to the peripheral part. Then pre-exercise blood glucose level. Why is it important? We'll see further. Then heart rate maximum. It is determined by the formula 220 minus H. Okay. Then VO2 max. VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen. Okay, volume of oxygen. Okay, then RPE, rate of perceived exertion. It is determined by Borg scale. We use Borg scale for this. So it determines that how much exertion a person can do and what is good for him. Then repetition maximum. Maximum weight a person can lift in one repetition, okay, or one time. So repetition maximum is important for determining how much resistance you have to give to a person while doing resistance exercises. Then exercise stress testing. It is not important to do exercise stress testing in every kind of person, but if you suspect that there is any cardiovascular risk, you can go for it, and it is mandatory in that case. Then we come to pre-exercise blood glucose level. So before exercising, we take the blood glucose level through glucometer or whatever kind of thing is present with you to assess the blood glucose levels. Okay. So if the blood glucose is less than 90 mg per dl, Okay, this is the standard count. So if it is less than 90 mg per dl, we will ask the patient to ingest approximately 15 to 30 grams of fast acting carbohydrates. Now you will ask, what is fast acting carbohydrates? It is when have you seen a marathon runner? There is several stalls in between the running line where they serve juice or they serve instant glucose. Okay, so these are fast acting carbohydrate. We have to provide it for instant energy. Okay, basically these are done before any aerobic exercises. Okay, so we have to do this, and after that we will also take his glucose levels in between exercises to make sure that the person is not getting hypoglycemic or he is not getting fainted or getting any symptoms of weakness. For prolonged activities at moderate intensity, consume additional carbohydrates as needed. So basically, it is 0.5 to 1 gram per kg body mass, okay, per hour. So this thing you have to take into account if the person is hypoglycemic. Now we talk about if the person is having normal blood glucose level, that is 90 to 150 mg per dl. So what we will do, we will start consuming carbohydrate on the onset of exercise, because in most exercises the person is supposed to get into hypoglycemia. So we will give him approximately 5 to 1 gram per kg body mass per hour of glucose, okay, according to exercises you are prescribing. Then if the person is hyperglycemic, that is 150 to 250 mg per dl, what you will do, you will not give additional glucose level, but when you will start the exercise or when you will initiate the exercise, you will go with the subsequent checkups. Okay, subsequent checkups of blood glucose level. So if you find that the person is going into hypoglycemia, you will give him you will give him glucose. Okay, then 250 to 350 mg per dl. Okay, in this case you can uh, give the shots of insulin prior to exercise, and it should be at least 30 minutes prior to exercise. Okay, you will test for ketones, and you will not perform any exercise is if moderate to large amount of ketones are present. So this is very important. If ketone bodies are present, you won't initiate any kind of exercise, or you will do only mild to moderate intensity of exercise if the person is very hyperglycemic and having ketone bodies. Okay, then if the person is in danger zone, that is equivalent or greater than 350 mg per dl, and when you will test for ketones, ketone body will be present. So basically you won't perform moderate exercises. In this case, personally I feel that the patient is very tired to do any kind of exercise, so you can initiate yoga or progressive relaxation exercises to keep the patient calm and out of uh, panic attacks. Okay, if ketones are negative, that there is no trace of ketone body, consider conservative insulin correction. Okay, you will give insulin shots at that time, initiate mild to moderate exercise and avoid intense exercise until glucose level decreases. So you will check glucose levels in between exercises also, and if there is not a trace of ketone body, then only you will perform exercises, otherwise you will avoid them. Then the principles of exercises were frequency, intensity, time and time. You know what is frequency? Refers to how often you are physically active and usually measured in days per week. Means how many days you are performing exercises in a week. Then we will come to intensity. Intensity determines that how hard your body is working for that physical activity or exercise. Okay, it is basically light, moderate or vigorous. Okay, let's say if I am doing 50 sets, okay, 50 sets in an hour, and the other person is doing 20 sets per hour, so my intensity is greater than the other one. So that's how intensity is calculated. Then time is how long you are spending your uh, time to do that exercise or to do that physical activity. Then type, what kind of exercises you are doing. Are you engaging in aerobic exercises or resistance exercises or yoga or tai chi or whatever exercise that you are engaging is the type of exercise. Okay, then the other principles that govern exercises are the overload principle, the specificity principle, the reversibility principle, and the individuality principle. You know what is overloading? Okay, when there is a muscle which can lift the weight of 10 kg, okay, then I give that person 12 kgs of weight. That is overloading. Okay, so after some time that person will get adapted to 12 kg of weight. Okay, this is overload principle. Specificity principle is only a specific muscle group is targeted. Okay, like in diabetes we target large muscle groups, so that is a specificity of exercise regime. Okay, then the reversibility principle, if the person is not working or is very uh, lazy and not doing exercises for 15 days after getting engaged into 1 week exercises, the effects of those 1 week exercises will get resolved. Okay, and you won't be able to see that again. So the individuality principle states that every person is different. Every person's metabolic and physical adaptations is different to different exercises. I am doing aerobic exercises. I decrease 1 kg weight in 12 months. Okay, and the other person decreases 1 kg weight in 1 week, and he doesn't gain it back. So this is individuality. My body is different, and the other person's body is different. And why this is important in a diabetic person? It is important because every diabetic is different. Somewhere somebody's metabolism is good, and in some cases metabolism is too slow. So we have to take this into account. Then SAT's principle. SAT principle is a specific adaptation to imposed demands. Okay, so as we said, specific principles are there, a specificity principle. So what we target is uh, exercise should be specific to the demands of the time. Okay, so basically every exercise gives an a specific effect on the body, specific adaptations to take place in the body in response to a specific type of stimuli. If I am doing strength training, that my strength will increase. If I am doing running or any aerobic training, my endurance will be increased. Okay, so these are the things that will happen with specific exercises. So this is what SAT principle says. Then type of exercises you need to target. I have divided these exercises into only three categories. The first category is aerobic exercises, second is resistance exercises, and third one is flexibility and balance. Okay, in aerobic exercises, so first of all we discussed what are aerobic exercises. Aerobic exercise involves repeated and continuous movement of large muscle groups. Okay, and it involves exercises like walking, cycling, jogging, swimming. Okay, that rely primarily on aerobic energy production systems or immediate energy production systems. Okay, that's why we need to give carbohydrate, instant carbohydrate before starting the exercises. Okay, then creative type of aerobic workout. Okay, why I have included this? Because you need to be creative with your workout routines. If you will engage the person in doing cycling or jogging or walking daily, he will get tired. So you need to be creative, play some music, engage him in light zumba or Swiss ball workout or light walkathon. Okay, so this will give great results and the person will be involved in those exercises instead of getting tired. And this is the biggest problem with diabetic people, that they get tired too early, they get bored and they leave the exercise regime if it is boring. Then intensity. Okay, if you are doing aerobic exercise, you need to take these points into account. First of all, moderate to high volumes of aerobic activity are associated with substantially lower cardiovascular and overall mortality risk in both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So basically you can give aerobic activity that is moderate in nature to type 1 and type 2 diabetes both. Okay, and they you have to take this into account, that you cannot engage a person that is very lazy and very overweight into moderate exercises. So you have to start with mild one. Okay, in type 1 diabetes, aerobic training increases cardiorespiratory fitness, decreases insulin resistance, and improves lipid levels and endothelial function. Okay, अगर आप if you are doing aerobic training, okay, then you will see these effects in the person. You will gradually see that the diabetologist he is going to consult decreases or tapers his insulin dose day by day, and this magic actually happens. In individuals with type 2 diabetes, regular training reduces triglycerides, blood pressure, and insulin resistance. Okay, these are all the data taken from researches. References are given later on, so you can refer to them. High intensity of interval training. Okay, this promotes rapid enhancement of skeletal muscle oxidative capacity, insulin sensitivity, glycemic controls in type 2 diabetes, and can be performed without deterioration in glycemic control in type 1 diabetes. So if you will do HIIT, you won't see glycemic index getting down in type 1 diabetics, but you will see good result in type 2 diabetics with that. With postural hypotensions, avoid activities with rapid postural or directional changes. That is, if you are doing movements like Zumba, okay, or if you are engaged in walkathon, don't do it at a fast pace. Do it at a very moderate or mild pace, so that the person with diabetic hypertension can cope up with his condition. Okay, then these are some data taken from American Heart Association. They say that uh, there is a relation between age, target heart rate zones, and average maximum heart rate. So you have to look over this. Okay, if the person is 20 years, the target heart rate zone should be 100 to 170 beats per minute. So basically whatever you get maximum heart rate, you have to target 50 to 85% of maximum heart rate to keep the exercise moderate in intensity. So this is the basic goal of this chart. So you can see that most of the people with diabetes are in the age group of 40 to 70. Okay, so we can keep the average target heart rate here as 140. Okay, so if the target heart rate is 140, I need to do moderate aerobic training. Then classification of physical activity intensity based on physical activity lasting up to 16 minutes. So very light exercises have less than VO2 max. Okay, maximal heart rate is less than 35 and RPA is less than 10. You will see the Borg scale, then you will measure this. Okay, then light exercises 20 to 39 VO2 max and 35 to 54 maximal heart rate. In moderate exercises, there will be 40 to 59 VO2 max and 55 to 69 maximal heart rate. Okay, so basically we have to target moderate only. If we will go to hard or very hard at very initial stages, the person will leave the exercise regime and he will never come back to you. Okay, so these are some charts that are used by fitness trainers to engage the person into resistance or aerobic exercises. Okay, so here the moderate rate is 70 to 80% of maximum heart rate or target heart rate. Okay, so it improves aerobic fitness. Okay, then duration and frequency. At least 150 minutes per week has to be invested into moderate to vigorous intensity of exercises by most of the adults with diabetes. Okay, then aerobic activity bouts should be ideally lasting at least 10 minutes with the goal of 30 minutes per day or more. Most days of the weeks for adults with type 2 diabetes. So basically, you need to target at least 5 days per week with 150 minutes of exercise per week for uh, adults with diabetes. Okay, for adults able to run steadily at 6 miles per hour, that is 9.7 kilometer per hour. For this thing, you can use various kind of apps that are in the market to measure how long the person ran and at what speed they ran. So you can ask the patient to buy those apps or get that meter, speedometer it is called. Okay, so for 25 minutes you have to do these exercises for good results. Basically 75 minutes per week of vigorous activity may provide similar cardioprotective and metabolic benefits. Then 3 to 7 days per week will no more than 2 consecutive days without exercise. That means if I am engaging a person initially into a exercise regime, what I will do, I will suggest him either do these exercise alternatively, or you can do it 3 days per week and then leave 2 days and then engage into 3 days of exercise and then again leave 2 days. Okay, so you can do that. Or when the person goes at the high level exercises, when he is able to do maximal exercises, you can ask him to do 7 days per week also. Then progression of these exercises, a greater emphasis should be placed on vigorous intensity aerobic exercises if fitness is a primary goal of exercises and not contraindicated by complication. Okay, mark these words, they are not contraindicated by complication. If there is complication, you won't engage the person in vigorous intensity aerobic exercises, you will just stick to the mild to moderate. Both HIIT and continuous exercise training are appropriate activities for most individuals with diabetes. And you need to know this, that if a person is suffering from cardiac complications, then you will engage the person into cardiac rehabilitation simultaneously. So these are some of the pictures of aerobic training, which includes running, Zumba, swimming, okay, cycling, cross trainer, HIIT, okay, and other exercises like Swiss ball exercises also are included there. So you can engage the person in all these creative exercises and keep him interested. Then resistance exercises. Resistance training is any exercise that causes the muscle to contract against external resistance with the expectation of increase in strength, tone, mass, or endurance. Okay, so we will put external resistance either manually or by free weights or by weight curves or resistance bands, or we will use body weight also for these kind of trainings. But we have to make sure if the person is having any kind of deformity, I am repeating this again and again, if the person is having any kind of deformity or the person is suffering from peripheral neuropathy, you won't engage the person in body weight training, or you won't engage that limb into body weight training, because that may cause further injuries and the person may lose his leg because of your negligence. You must assess repetition maximum before exercises. Okay, what kind of exercises you are going to engage in, that depends on repetition maximum only. Then Resistance training is just as important as cardio. Train yourself to resist chocolate, pastries, fried food, beer, and pizza. Okay, so resistance is not only in exercises, it should also be engaged into dietary regime. Okay, so intensity of resistance exercises. Resistance exercise should be moderate. Okay, greater than 50% of one repetition maximum. That is 1 RM, that is maximum amount of weight one can lift in a single repetition of a given exercise. Or you can engage him into vigorous exercises, that is 75 to 80% of 1 RM at intensity. I have mentioned the doses here, so that you can engage the patient according to his repetition maximum. What we do, we tend to think that 75 to 80% of 1 RM is a moderate kind of exercise, a person can do that. That is not the right way of doing things. You can injure the patient, because in diabetics there is also the complication of joint stiffness, like frozen shoulder, okay, or osteoarthritis, okay, or periarthritic. Okay, so these all are the conditions that are associated with diabetes patients, so you have to take a lot of care about repetition maximum. Okay, then moderate. What is the moderate repetition maximum? 15 repetition of an exercise that can be repeated no more than 15 times. Okay, to vigorous. Vigorous means 6 to 8 repetition of an exercise that can be repeated no more than 6 to 8 times. Okay, so these are moderate and vigorous exercises. Doing resistance training of any intensity is recommended to improve strength, balance, ability to engage in activities of daily living throughout lifespan. Okay, so these points should be noted. Okay, then what you need to know before engaging the patient into uh, resistance training. There is one formula, it is famous by the name of Brisky's formula. Okay, this is the formula to count 1 RM of a patient. Okay, so it's denoted by weight divided by 1.0278 minus 0.0278 into number of repetitions. So you have to find repetition maximum and then multiply it by the number of repetitions to get the patient's moderate to maximum level of exercise training. Okay, then PRE, you have to follow Oxford formula or DeLong's formula to engage the person into progressive resistance exercises. I hope you know that, as it is given in your Dina Gardner also, and it is taught to you in first year. Okay, and then DAPRE. DAPRE is quite different from PRE. In PRE, we subsequently increase the number of either we increase the number of repetitions or we increase the weight, but in DAPRE it is adjusted according to the need of the person. Okay, it is also by the name of daily adjusted progressive resistance exercises. In this you engage the patient into 4 stages. The first stage of DAPRE consists of 1 RM, okay, with 10 repetitions. Okay, then the second stage also constitute of the same. The third stage gradually increases the number of repetition maximum, and the fourth stage consists of 100% of the repetition maximum. Okay, so in the third stage you will take at least 50% of the repetition maximum, and in the fourth stage you will take 100%. And this kind of exercise, this kind of progressive resistance exercises are proved to be very well working in the case of diabetics. So you need to learn about this, and you need to engage your patient into DAPRE. Then duration and frequency. At least 8 to 10 exercises with completion of 1 to 3 sets of 10 to 15 repetitions to near 40 per set on every exercise early in training. That means you need to do exercises in such way that the person does not get fatigued, but at least doing his maximum effort to engage in those exercises. Okay, the person should not come to you next day with DOMS or pain in his back or his shoulders or any kind of subluxation. A minimum of 2 non-consecutive days, just like we were doing in aerobic exercises. We will keep 2 days break in between of uh, any workout that is done on moderate intensity. Okay, then progression. Beginning training intensity should be moderate, involving 10 to 15 repetitions per set, with increases in weight or resistance undertaken with the lower number of repetitions. Okay, what does this mean? You can increase the number of repetitions later, but right now you have to start the repetitions. Uh, what I do is basically I engage the person into his comfort zone level first. If he is very lazy, then engage him in those exercises which are comfortable for him. Then afterwards you can increase the resistance and repetitions. Only after the largest number of repetitions per set can consistently be exceeded. Increases in resistance can be followed by greater number of sets and finally be increased training frequency. Okay, first you will increase the weight, then you will increase the repetition, then finally you will get to increase the frequency of the training sessions. Okay, these are some of the resistance exercises we do. Okay, it can be done by body weight training. Okay, it can be done on Swiss ball by the help of weights or by the help of machines. It can also be done on steppers. It can also be done by therapeutic belts. It can also be done by your resistance bands. Okay, or resistance tubes. Okay, these are all the resistance exercises you can engage the patient into. Then flexibility and balance exercises. Basically what happens when if a patient is diabetic and he goes to a normal yoga trainer, what he does, he stretches the person beyond his limits, even if the person is yelling that I am getting pain. So basically the muscle get pulled and next day the patient discontinues. So you don't have to do this. Stretch the patient only if the patient is able to accommodate the further stretching, or it is not causing extra pain or very much pain that the person takes it back to the home and comes later with wounds. Okay, so stretching can be done by static method, dynamic method. PNF stretching can also be done. Okay, yoga and Pilates. Then balance exercises can be done for older adults. That is, you have read about Frankel's exercises. Okay, practice standing on one leg, exercises using balance equipments like wobble board, etc. Lower body and core resistance exercises or Tai Chi. These are all balance exercises. Okay, so you can engage the patient into these kind of regimes. First of all, I want to say you cannot use ballistic stretching and resistance and loaded stretching in the patient with diabetes. It is a big no-no, because in ballistic stretching, what you do, you give a high intensity or very frequent exercises without any break, or it is not slow, it is very fast, and it causes further muscle injuries or further joint injuries to the patient. So ballistic stretching is a big no-no, and resistance and loaded stretching is also a big no-no. Okay, and among these all kind of stretching, what I personally prefer is PNF stretching and active stretching, static stretching. Okay, dynamic stretching is also good, but at a very slow pace. Then intensity. Stretch to the point of tightness or slight discomfort. You don't have to stretch the patient like a rubber band. Okay, Okay, whatever he is doing with a faith. He is putting his faith in you. Don't treat the patient like he is a rubber band and you can stretch him beyond the limit. Balance exercises of light to moderate intensity. Okay, so basically when we read about all these kind of regimes, we can either mix those regime in a particular manner, like we can do 10 minutes of aerobic exercises or 20 minutes of aerobic exercises, then 10 minutes of resistance exercises, then 10 minutes of stretching, so that the person get engaged into all kind of activities. Or we can allot a day to a particular activity, that today is Zumba, we will do Zumba on a moderate intensity, then the next day will be of yoga or Swiss ball exercises, other day we will do Tai Chi, the other day we will do swimming or cycling, the other day we will do resisted exercises. Okay, so we can allot days or we can mix them we can do that either way. uh, but we have to take into consideration that the patient is liking your regime or not. So these are all balance and flexibility exercises you can get. This is the passive stretching. This is the active stretching and yoga. You can use bolster. You can use chair. If the patient is too much obese, you can engage the patient into chair exercises. Okay, you can ask the patient to sit on Swiss ball and do stretching. Then you can help the patient to do stretching on Swiss ball also. Okay, you can ask them to stand on a wobble board and do balancing. Okay, so all these exercises are dependent on the patient's condition and what kind of thinking he keeps for his exercise regime. Okay, then duration and frequency. Hold static or do dynamic stretch for 10 to 30 seconds, 2 to 4 repetitions of each exercise. Okay, then yoga sessions may last from 30 to 45 minutes, 5 days a week. Gyrokinesis Tai Chi sessions may last for 10 to 15 minutes along with other aerobic exercises. So basically, what is gyrokinesis and Tai Chi? When you engage a person into stretching exercises or rhythmic movements which are slow in pace, okay, along with breathing control, that is called gyrokinesis and Tai Chi. Okay, so these exercises are basically designed for either martial arts or either health management. So you can use them in both purposes. Basically, someone was asking me in the last webinar about Tai Chi, so I would like to tell you something about this. These exercises are very effective in increasing your joint mobility and pressure receptors, and it can give you a good result in peripheral neuropathy also. So Tai Chi is very effective in diabetes, and later on there is an image, you can see various type of Tai Chi exercises in that. Okay, balance training can be of any duration. Okay, you can ask the patient to engage into a balance training. Then flexibility, 2 to 3 days per week. Balance, 2 to 3 days per week. Okay, these are some Tai Chi moves you can engage the patient into. Starting posture will be standing with hands on the sides, then raising both hands. Then you can see the image A1, A2, and A3 here, how she is doing. Okay, then the second one is forearm rolling to both sides, where there are trunk rotations. Okay, then the other one is twist. Okay, here you can see the person is standing in a lunge position. In these kind of position, what happens, there is effective loading of joint. Okay, like knee joint and ankle joint, and uh, the effective loading uh, of muscles also. In this, you can engage the large muscle groups very effectively. Okay, then the other thing is grasp the bird's tail, both sides. In this kind of exercises, what happens, the person is totally engaged into a relaxation mode. Okay, the person will do these exercises really slowly and with his breathing control, so it will give a good effect of relaxation. Okay, then cloud hands, single whip, work at shuttles on both sides, raising left and then right hand, then closing arm. All these exercises are Tai Chi exercises, Tai Chi regime. You can adopt these, and these are very good, very effective in older people. Then progression. Continue to work on flexibility and balance training, increasing duration or frequency to progress over time. So basically, we are increasing the number of exercises or the duration, or we can increase the frequency, or at last we can increase all. Avoid Valsalva maneuver during resistance training in patient. If you are doing body resistance with these exercises, there is body resistance in yoga also. Okay, so you have to avoid Valsalva maneuver. Even in Tai Chi, there is some people engage into Valsalva maneuver. What is Valsalva maneuver? When you lift anything, or when you engage into body weight training, you take a large amount of air inside your lungs, and then you release it on one go, and you lift that thing. Okay, so this is Valsalva maneuver, and when you engage it with exercises, it can cause further damage in patients with hypertension. Okay, some other exercise maneuver you can give to diabetic patients are calf contractions. Alternate contractions of calf muscles of each leg while sitting, giving a good squeeze of calf muscles. Alternatively, one or both calves can be contracted and held for some times. This maneuver can be done even while lying on bed. Okay. Then pectoral pressure. One or both pectorals can be contracted and held for 30 to 60 seconds longer. Okay, the strength of contractions will depend on one's motivation and ability. Okay, motivation and ability is very important, because the person who comes to you is highly demotivated. He is highly teased by his disease. Okay, so he comes with a very less willpower. So first of all, you have to work on this motivation sessions, and you have to counsel the patient so that he keeps on doing exercises even if you are not there. Okay, alternatively, moderate contractions can be maintained for a longer duration. Then shoulder squeezes. The back has some of the strongest muscles we know, and we are targeted to large muscle groups, so we can target to our back muscles. Okay, so we can contract those muscles, hold that position for 30 to 60 seconds, and then release. The next maneuver is Buger's Allen exercises. Okay, these exercises are done in three stages. The first stage is when the patient lies supine with the legs elevated and supported at 45 to 60 degrees of angle. Maintain this position for 1 to 3 minutes, and then releasing this. With this position, we will also do ankle pumps. Okay, then the second position is when the patient is sitting. Okay, and the leg lies down the table or down the bed. Okay, he is at the 90-degree position, then doing dorsiflexion and plantar flexion of his ankles for at least 1 to 3 minutes. Okay, and it has to be continued till the rubor occur. Rubor means redness of the feet. This means that your feet is getting good supply of oxygen, good supply of blood and nutrients. So it is very good in the patient with peripheral neuropathy or peripheral arterial disease. Okay. Then the third position is when the patient again lies into supine position. Okay, with his feet on the at the level of his heart, not up, not down, at the level of his heart for at least 5 minutes and rest. Okay, then the entire three-stage procedure is repeated to 3 to 6 times. So this maneuver you can basically do in diabetic patient. It is especially designed for them. Okay, so it looks like this. See, in the first stage, the patient is lying supine with his legs elevated to 45 to 60 degrees and doing ankle plantar flexion and dorsiflexion or inversion eversion. In the second stage, the person is sitting and he's doing ankle movements. And in the third stage, the patient is lying supine and not doing any kind of ankle movements. He's just lying and relaxing. Okay, so these are Brugger Allen exercises. These are some of the references. Before before stopping this presentation or before exiting, I want to tell one thing that you can also engage the patient into some cognitive exercises. I haven't mentioned them here because we are talking about physical exercises here, but you can engage the patient into cognitive exercises also. You can engage him into cyclic relaxation, progressive relaxation exercises, or you can uh, talk to him. Okay, this is also exercise. It's mental exercise. Okay, exercise is just not physical, it's also mental. So you can engage the patient into these kind of exercises. Group therapy also, you can collect 10 people with diabetes. You can engage the person into conversation with those diabetics, and you can take him out of his distress. It is a huge thing to do for a diabetic person because it gives great results, and the patient is psychologically and physically good. So these are my references. You can look up to them. You can take screenshots and refer them later. Thank you for listening. And this is the notion I want to say. I will not let age change me. I will change the way I age. Thank you. So, any questions related to this?
Ruchika, any specific reason for why we should not do exercise when there are ketones?
Sir, when there are ketone bodies present in blood, it is basically the indication that your kidney failure can occur in later stages. So, if you keep on exercising, the ketone bodies will increase, and it can take the patient into a shock stage. That is not good for him, and the patient can lead into hospital due to our negligence.
Okay,
So,
now second question. How can we find out the ketone bodies or just what you say, use the routine glucometer? Or you
no.
use any, you recommend any other way to find out the ketone bodies?
Yeah, sir. See, when we take glucose measures through glucometer, as we said that if there is greater amounts of blood glucose present, then ketone bodies must or might be there. Okay, so if there is very large amount of glucose, we will refer the patient to any diagnostic center for ketone body examination. And if the person says that okay, I'm not having any ketone bodies or my kidney is functioning good, then we will continue the exercises. There is no harm into giving patient 1 day relaxation and getting himself checked.
So we as a physiotherapist, just a screening way or the tool can be what you call that portable glucometer. So
Yeah,
before exercise we can use. Okay,
yeah. We
got it.
cannot set up whole diagnostic center in
Right,
a
right. I
yeah.
understand. I
That's
understand. So
why we can.
just look for high amount of glucose bodies, and most of the time glucometer tells you that there are ketones. So that's
Yeah.
the best way. Right, right. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
hello. Uh,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, Ruchika ma'am, one question from Earth Joshi. When the patient are 40 year old and the weight is 110 kg, he was suffering from diabetes and blood pressure, or his diabetic level is 180 to 190 regular days. So, which kind of exercise will starting in future for that patient?
See, 180 to 190 glucose is quite high. Okay, so you can ask the patient to start with mild exercises, then measure the patient's glucose again. If the patient is getting hypoglycemic or getting a normal glucose, at that moment you can continue the exercises. And when the patient goes beyond normal levels of glucose, or he is getting too much hypoglycemic, you can give him carbohydrates, instant carbohydrates, and continue your exercises at moderate to maximal level as the patient suggests, or he is feeling comfortable about it.
Okay,
Is that
ma'am.
clear?
Thank you.
Any other questions?
If anyone have a doubt, then they can ask. Mm,
Okay.
okay, ma'am. No one is asking, so I think. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your knowledge with all of us. And this webinar was really informative and really useful for all of us. So thank you so much again.
Thank you, ma'am, for inviting me to do this webinar. Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. And I really appreciate you all for taking this step to create awareness. Thanks a lot. Thank you to all the listeners for listening me so patiently.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much again. So now I declare the webinar is finished. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ruchika madam, thank you and good day. Bye bye. Looking forward to listen to you once again on maybe juvenile diabetes.
Okay, sir.